So, the time has finally arrived, Sonic Dream Team. I played through it, and the big question is, was it worth it? Was it worth buying an Apple TV to play this game? No, it was not, but the game is pretty good. I enjoyed it. It's far from the best Sonic game I've ever played, or the best 3D game, or anything, but it's not a bad game at all. It's pretty good. I had a good time playing it. My favorite thing about Sonic Dream Team is kind of the design philosophy that this game was built around, because it's very different than anything we've seen in other 3D Sonic games, and in ways it's kind of something closer to what I've always sort of wanted out of 3D Sonic gameplay. It's a very simple, straightforward, focused Sonic game, which is exactly what I want. It's just got the core Sonic gameplay, and that's all there is to the game, which is very good for me, but it varies it up through having 3 different types of characters that can platform in slightly different ways and get access to different areas, and that's all A-okay. That's exactly the kind of thing I like to see in a Sonic game. And the gameplay and level design structure of this game is also quite different than other 3D Sonic games, in that it has less of that kind of hallway-like level design, and especially that QTE-like level design that we see a lot in the Boost games. Certainly, there are definitely some very linear sections here, but there are also many sections where it opens up and gives you more opportunities to approach the level in different ways, and there's lots of different routes, and it does typical Sonic stuff of different routes offering different shortcuts and things. And there are also some parts of the levels where it completely opens up and says you gotta collect some keys in the area to keep going forward, and it turns a little sandboxy, and it's quite cool. A lot of the ways that the level design is built here is the kind of level design that I want to be seeing in a 3D Sonic game. And on top of that, the physics in this game are shockingly very good. The momentum feels really good. Boosting feels closer to, like, Sonic Frontiers than, the other Boost games. You got a nice turn radius that feels very natural in momentum. You have to pull back when you're platforming to not overshoot things. You don't have like a stomp or a bounce that kind of lets you cheat that a little bit. You can run on walls just by running up the wall, and it just works. You don't need scripting or anything to make that happen. And I was really surprised that when you're on a wall, if you're not boosting, gravity will even pull you down, which is like, yeah, that makes sense. That's how it should work in a 3D Sonic game, right? And it was quite surprising to see. I was very pleased by that. And, slope jumping is there. It feels really good. And there are also these moving platforms that kind of rise and lower very quickly. And I was like, I wonder. And yes, you can jump during those to get a really big boost to your jump. And you can even boost and jump while it's rising. And you'll get these massive jumps. And I'm like, hell yeah, dude. Very cool. I was very pleased with the physics of this game. It honestly feels quite better than anything that Sonic Team has ever given us in a 3D game, which is weird, but it's part of the reason that I was excited about this game, the fact that Sonic Team was not developing it, which is kind of a bad thing. It shows how little confidence and how little faith I have in Sonic Team these days, that, oh, Sonic Superstars isn't developed by Sonic Team? Sonic Dream Team isn't developed by Sonic Team? That's exciting. I can't wait to play Sonic games not made by Sonic Team. Hopefully one day that won't be the case, but as of right now, that's just how I feel. Another thing about this game that's like, why is this better than Sonic Team stuff, is the animation. There's not a lot of animation in this game. A lot of the cutscenes are done with these kind of motion comics, which are not great. But when you do get some character animation, it's quite expressive and animated, and it looks pretty good. Oh yeah, it's worth mentioning that this game is a collectathon, which is something new for Sonic. They've never really done that before, but it's kind of done like a Mario 64 kind of thing, where the first mission when you get to a new act is just to play through the level and get to the end of it, and then after that you unlock a bunch of other missions that plop you in a specific area and ask you to do some kind of specific challenge. Maybe it'll be get to the end of this platforming sequence, or it'll get through all of the rings before time runs out, or it'll ask you to collect all the crystals that have been spread around this more open area, things like that. Very basic stuff, and for the most part, they're pretty whatever. Sometimes they can be nice in that they force you to play as a certain character type, allowing you to check all the shortcuts and stuff and different routes and options that you might have passed over before. And a lot of those more open sandboxy areas, these are well utilized throughout these, where a lot of it you just kind of run past them when you're just playing through the levels. There's also time trials just to get through the level as quickly as possible, which are okay, but not really too strict or anything. And weirdly, they have all the, like, open-ended areas are just open, so you can just run right to the end of them, which is strange. Overall, it mostly felt like padding to me, because if you only played through the levels one time and then that was it, this game would probably be less than an hour long, which I'd be perfectly fine with, especially considering it's a phone game, but, you know, gotta pad out those games because game length is the best. It's always the most important factor, and being a good game is less important, so we should sacrifice the quality of the game and give it worse pacing and more repetition to make it longer. That's good for games, for sure. Not that it's a real issue here. A lot of these side missions and stuff are enjoyable enough. I just think that maybe they'd be better served as extra side content, and the core of the game was just playing through the levels, because it does ultimately feel kind of repetitive of just, I'm playing through these areas again and doing these platforming challenges again, and it's kind of just whatever. Boss fights are not very good, so that's pretty par for the course for Sonic games, but I also found that there's no consequences to dying in this game. So if you die during a boss fight, you just respawn and you just continue the boss right where you were. You don't lose any progress or have to redo the previous hits or anything. So that's a little weird, but I guess whatever. And I suppose along with that, I'll say that the game overall is very easy, which I guess is not too surprising. But more than that, I feel is kind of an issue here, is that I like the ideas of how this game is designed, but the actual game and level design itself is very basic and straightforward most of the time. It's not asking you for very much. A lot of it is kind of just follow the path, and that's a big chunk of what you're doing. Which, I guess, you know, it's a mobile game, so they don't want to get too crazy with things, but it certainly can be a bit uninteresting in its design a good portion of the time. Still enjoyable, still fun, but I feel like if you had this kind of game and level design ideology, but with more interesting and complex game and level design, that could be a really excellent 3D Sonic game. This feels like it is really holding back and trying not to do anything too crazy, and in that it's not doing anything too interesting either. It's adequate, it's fine, I guess it gets the job done, but yeah, I would have hoped for a little bit more. And there are some sections of certain levels where it does ask for a little bit more, especially when things get a little more open and you have multiple routes you can take. Then you can, you know, analyze the level design and think what path you want to take and which one will be faster or which one has collectibles on it and things like that. But when you get to the more linear guided sequences, and it's just kind of, you're going, and there's not too much more to it than just use the ability it wants you to use. Fly from here to there, glide across this, climb up this wall. Just not super amazing design to me. Visually, the game looks pretty good. I had to turn the graphics settings down a little bit on my Apple TV. I got a 3rd generation one. And I assume that the performance sliders are there for people that want to play on, like, Macs and stuff that are more powerful. It's fine. It looks decently well enough from a technical perspective. Artistically, it looks pretty good. I especially like the look of the last zone in the game, the Ego City, which is a fun name for an Eggman-themed world. And it's quite nice. I like how it's a very different take on, like, an Eggman has taken over kind of thing, how it's all, like, bright and cheery and colorful. It's like celebrating the glory of Eggman, and that's pretty fun. The music in the game, I gotta say, overall is pretty weak. It doesn't really stand out very much. Only kind of the main theme from, like, the intro. And that's pretty much it. Everything else is very reserved and pretty I also found the sound mixing in this game could use some work. Some things were too quiet, some things were too loud. And just in general, the game is fairly polished, but I did encounter a couple of bugs here and there where I glitched through a platform, or I had some issues with changing settings around in the game, and then it just, like, froze and I had to close and restart it. So, not the most polished game in the world, but not bad either, especially by Sonic game standards. This is much more polished than most 3D Sonic games. And I think that's pretty much it outside of story stuff. And as far as the story is concerned, there really isn't much of story at all here in this game. It's pretty nothing, about what I expected. I'd say I'm disappointed by that, but I can't really be disappointed if it met my expectations, because my expectations for Sonic storytelling are just so low these days. I will say that the character writing didn't feel too egregiously off to me, and there weren't a lot of annoying, stupid references all over the place, so that was nice. Personal gripe here, there's no dual audio options in this game, so I couldn't play with Japanese voices, which I always like to play Sonic games with Japanese voices. I had to go with the English cast, and I've never really heard Cream's current English voice very much, and I gotta say, I do not like it. I'm not really a fan of most of the current English voices, to be honest, but Cream in particular sounds quite bad to me. And another small thing I want to criticize this game's story for is that it's a very, I don't know, generic and typical kind of story for a game with this premise. You know, you're going into dreams and stuff, whatever, and so, okay, what's the deal here? What's going on? And at a certain point early on in the story, they introduce the Reverie, and Eggman's trying to get his hands on it. Oh, what's that? And before they even said it, I'm like, it brings your dreams into reality. And yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's just so obvious, so basic, so typical. And it doesn't really feel like much of a Sonic story. It feels like it could be any generic video game story. This could be a Crash Bandicoot game. Crash and Coco went into the dream world to stop Neo Cortex from getting the Reverie and taking over the world by bringing his dreams into reality. Or, I don't know, fuck, it could be like the premise of a SpongeBob game or something. It just feels like it could be anything. And a lot of the best Sonic stories, they rely on them being Sonic stories. They'll either revolve around Sonic in some capacity, or the Chaos Emeralds, or something unique to the Sonic series that make it a Sonic story. And this doesn't really feel like a Sonic story. It just feels like a generic video game story about going into dreams and stopping the bad guy. And the Sonic characters are in it. Honestly, as horribly as the story is told, I would say that Sonic Shuffle does a better job with the whole Sonic Dreams thing, because that actually tried, didn't do a good job, but it had a theme, it tried to get something across, it had a message, and of course Sonic Team in the past has handled dreams well with Knights and stuff, so this is quite underwhelming to me, but again, it's a phone game, so I wasn't expecting much, and yeah, it's not much. And I think that's about everything I have to say about Sonic Dream Team for this first impressions. I haven't totally finished the game yet. I only, beat the game, hit the credits. But I have some more stuff to do. Go back and get all the collectibles, find all the red rings and things. And also Time Attack, of course. I always reserve my final judgment of a Sonic game until I've Time Attacked the levels, so we'll see how that ends up working out. I guess for anyone curious about game length, it took me about 2.5 hours to hit the credits, and I have like 70-something of the main collectible, and I think there's like 101 of them in the game, so I'm about 70% through, so probably got another half hour to maybe an hour left in the game, depending on how long it takes me to find all the red rings and stuff. And, for a mobile game, that seems pretty meaty, and with the amount of stuff in this between all these levels, and the story, and all the voice acting, and it being a 3D platformer and everything with, some larger design, boss fights, everything, seems like pretty high production value as far as phone games are concerned, which is nice. And I believe they've said there's going to be some DLC and updates adding new content to this game and stuff, so that should be cool. Probably extra levels, maybe extra playable characters, maybe some more story stuff. Guess we'll see. And yeah, for anyone that's unsure about, Apple Arcade stuff, there are no microtransactions or anything like that in this game. There are, like, weekly challenges that you can come back and do that gives you XP and you level up. But it seems like it just gives you things to look at in the model viewer, in the gallery, whatever, so who cares? It's completely negligible. Though I do think that the missions that show up here in the rotation are different missions than the ones that are just in the game for you to play, so I guess that's something to come back and keep you playing if you really want to. but personally, I don't know how much I care about that kind of stuff. I'll probably come back again when there's major content additions and things like that. But yeah, it's a good game for sure. I definitely want to finish it, get all the collectibles. I definitely see myself in the future wanting to play through this game again, which is very unfortunate that it's an Apple Arcade thing. And I really do hope that it will come to other platforms eventually one day, but I don't know, man. At the end of the game, it's like produced by Apple, and it's like, oof, that's not a good sign. If you have the opportunity to play it, I would say it's definitely worth a shot. If you don't have an opportunity to play it, I wouldn't say you're missing out on anything too special or too important. There are many other Sonic games that I would recommend playing over this one that you probably haven't played, because have you played Sonic Unleashed for the Wii? Probably not, and you should fix that because the daytime levels in that game are really good. And similarly, have you played Sonic Pocket Adventure? Have you played the advanced games? Have you played the Rush games? Have you played Colors for DS? There are so many lesser appreciated Sonic games out there that many Sonic fans haven't played, so if you're upset about a Sonic game that you don't have the opportunity to play, I'd say, why don't you remedy that by going and playing a Sonic game that you've not played before? In most cases, what you play will probably be a better game than Dream Team, honestly. It's a perfectly good game, but at the end of the day, I'd still say it ranks relatively low for me as far as Sonic games are concerned. But who knows, maybe the time attack experience in this game will turn out to be really, really fun and completely win me over. It certainly happened to me many times in the past with Sonic games. So I guess we'll see what happens. But until then, thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time.